So today is the day that we put the FTE back in the 100 series and turn the key for the first time on this new engine. But before we jump straight into that, I just want to take you back and reflect on what we've been through so far. So there's just three small things I want to cover before we lift this engine up to put the clutch and flywheel on. I want to change the sump over, so we've got the 100 series sump on because the 79 series sump won't fit. We're going to prime the oil pump so that we don't dry start the oil pump and end up ruining that. And we're just going to check our earthing bolt holes and make sure that they're clear so that we're going to get a good contact there. So to prime the oil pump, you'll want to just take out this little grub screw here. You can pretty easily get an Allen key in there and crack it. And I just used a syringe and put maybe 40 or 50 mil of oil in and then tighten that grub screw back up. Priming the oil pump's a good idea just to prevent any dry starts when you first crank over that engine, just to make sure that it's not going to wear, it's all well lubricated in there, and you're not going to end up wrecking your oil pump starting it dry. Another good thing to check is anywhere that an earth wire bolts onto the engine block, it's probably a good idea just to scrape away that paint, just to make sure you get a really good contact and obviously the engine is earthing out properly. This would be a prime opportunity to do the rear main seal, and it's a really good idea to inspect it. Upon inspection, we found that this rear main was in really good condition and there was absolutely no signs of oil leaking or weeping. So we decided just to keep it in. I think it was probably more hassle than it was worth at this stage. But obviously that is up to the individual and what they think of their rear main seal at this point. But it is probably the time to replace it if you were going to. In just a week of being out of the vehicle and still in the shed, the flywheel had developed surface rust as it does down here in this coastal air. We used some ultra fine wet and dry sandpaper just to knock this off and ended up with a really nice machined edge finish. And of course, because it was a Sunday, there was nowhere open to go and buy a clutch alignment tool, so we kind of just made our own. I guess that's what you call the farmer's way. Anyway, it did the trick. Unfortunately, we probably won't be mass producing and selling these. So we really just had to put everything back together onto the engine bay, fill up the fluids and crank her over. We decided to leave all of the plugs off the fuel pump for a start so that we can crank the engine over a few times without it running. This allows the oil to fill the engine, prime the turbo, and just move throughout the engine before it's under the stress of 1,000 revs on idle. So you just plug these at any 2 points on the engine. Yeah, something like that. That was just in case there were any office fans watching. Okay, now it's time to turn it over. So we're going to crank it a few times without the fuel pump on, and then we'll crack a few injectors, prime the fuel pump from the filter, and turn her over. I've cracked 2. Oh, come on. You got fuel leaking out there and fuel here? Yep. Hey! He runs. Bloody beautiful! Hey! We got an FTE ready!
Check engine light coming on every time he puts it.
Every time what?
Every time he puts his foot on the pedal.
So we got a light. Oil pressure. Oil pressure, good. Alright, so the cruiser runs. There's no valves running into pistons or injectors running into pistons or anything crazy like that. But of course we knew that beforehand because we turned the engine over by hand. But unfortunately it doesn't quite end there. So we do have a little bit of troubleshooting to do. So for those of you with a tuned ear, I'm sure you would have heard that the engine was a little bit knocky when we started it up. A little bit of a rattle going on there. Not a rattle, but like it's an engine knock. Which does occur under advanced timing conditions. So because it's an electronically assisted fuel pump on these 1HDFTEs, I could be wrong, but my guess is that it depends on the things like the crank sensor to tell it whether to advance or retard the timing. Now, because it's a 79 series engine that we've put in there, I kept the crank sensor in there. But it turns out it's quite possible that the 79 series and 1HDFTE in the 100 series, the crank sensors are different. So what I'm going to have to do is actually grab the crank sensor out of the old block, put it in that block, and hope like hell that fixes the timing problem. Because there is an engine code and we are in limp mode. So that is my guess. That we've got the wrong crank sensor in there. So let's give that a go and see if it solves things. So here you go. What better chance to look at the crank sensor than when you can view it inside and out at the same time. Yep, that is a huge advantage of this hole. So you can see here, this is the crank position sensor. So that obviously detects the position of the crankshaft and then talks to the ECU, which I'm guessing then talks to the fuel pump to either advance or retard the timing, or to just position the timing, dependent on the crankshaft position. So obviously, I'm guessing that's different to the 79 series one for whatever reason. Obviously like things like your oil pressure senders and that don't work across different vehicles. So why wouldn't it be the same for a crank sensor? So we're gonna take that out, clean it up, and put it in that engine over there. There's the other one. And where's the hole? Up there. Good. All right, that's in. Taped up, soldered up. Let's That sounds okay. No engine light. Oh, that sounds heaps better. That's running right now. Yeah, give her a rev. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, give her a rev. Ooh, look at that soot. Yes. So there you go, guys. The FTE lives again. That is all for our little 5-part FTE rebuild mini-series here. I hope you found this entertaining or maybe even educational. Really, it was just me having a crack at rebuilding this and showing you how I went. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm sure you'll be seeing plenty more of this in the future. But for now, I'm going to finish this video with a small reel of literally just the sound of this.